would love to give a warm welcome to Carissa, who will tell us more about Every Bottle Back. Thank you.
Hi, good day, everyone. Thank you for that really amazing introduction, Michaela. Loved it. Just give me like 1 second. I'm going to share my screen so I can start that presentation. And share. You'll see my screen?
Not yet, no.
Please tell me you should see the screen now.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. All right, so my name is Carissa Gangadine, as mentioned earlier. I am an education and outreach coordinator for the project Every Bottle Back, which is done by the company Container Recycling Services Limited. It's a fairly new company. We only started in 2022 as a collection and sorting center. We mainly collect PET type 1 plastics and HDPE type 2 bottles. We also recently started collecting some Tetra Packs, which are the milk cartons, juice boxes, and aluminum beverage cans. So I have a quick poll that I would love to share with everyone. Hold on, I'm going to post the link right now on the site. And if everyone can just go head on over to it. Right, head on over to it and let's start weighing in on this question. So we want to know, how many plastic bottles do you think you've used this week? All right, so I'm seeing people weighing in. Okay. I just want to make sure you're still seeing my screen, right?
No, we're not. You can start back to share.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Let's see, share. Right, sure. Right. Okay, so I've seen the majority of people have said they use 1 to 5 plastic bottles this week. And let's see, 10% people say 6 to 10, 10%. All right, so let's keep these results in mind that about 70% of the people here have said they use about 1 to 5 plastic bottles this week, right? So we'll come back to this as we go. So Every Bottle Back TT, like I was saying earlier, we are NGO, mainly sponsored by Blue Waters, Caribbean bottlers such as Coca-Cola, and we've also had sponsorship from Republic Bank, Carreri, and Nestle. All these are stakeholders who want to make sure our country is cleaned up and has a brighter future ahead of itself. Our goal is to set up a collection and sorting network for used beverage containers, and it's mainly for the purpose of export to PET recyclers abroad. And we're hoping that eventually we could establish our own local recycling plants. One thing that makes us different than other recycling companies is we try to incentivize the program by offering a small deposit return for the bottles you drop into our facility. So when it comes down to it, we could offer about 5 cents per bottle. It sounds like a little bit, but it does add up over time. Our mission is to make sure we recover and recycle every PET plastic bottle sold in Trinidad and Tobago. And we do this by educating every citizen on the benefit of recycling and consistently providing them with a means to do so. We hope to achieve a more beautiful Trinidad and Tobago with pristine cities, roadsides, and beaches. And we want to put a stop to man-made flooding. So how does this relate to blue economy? So as I said, we want to make sure the oceans and all our marine ecosystems are cleared up of all this plastic debris. So just a little background. So blue economy, it refers to the responsible and sustainable use of ocean resources to drive economic growth, enhance livelihoods, generate employment opportunities, and protect marine ecosystems. The aquatic environment, it's really essential because they provide so many services. These include food, clean water, mineral resources, pharmaceutical ingredients, climate regulation, carbon sequestration, nutrient nutrient cycling, and recreational benefits. And these are just some things to name a few of it. According to the World Bank Group, 80% of ocean litter originates from land-based sources. This highlights the need for urgent and effective waste management strategies because, as they always say, prevention is better than cure. So how does plastic waste impact the marine ecosystem? So just a couple points where plastic exists in various sizes. We all know microplastics. It's been a big debate for the past couple of years because it's so deadly to us and marine organisms. There are megaplastics, which are things that are not broken down. So like the plastic bottles, the big debris that you would see floating in the oceans. And there's macroplastic, mesoplastics, and finally, when it breaks down to microplastics through either primary sources of what you call it, facial scrubs, and then there's secondary breakdown through physical, chemical, biological means, and it would go smaller and go into animals we would eat it and filter through. It's a big threat to biodiversity, fisheries, and coastal communities. Human activities are impacted a lot. Human activities include like tourism, fisheries, shipping. All of these suffer economic loss due to plastic pollution. Marine ecosystem organisms, face severe risks such as entanglement, toxic exposure, suffocation, and starvation. We've all seen the pictures of the sea turtles and marine birds, birds near coastline, that when they wash up on shore, when they die, you'd see their stomach exposed with all this plastic material that can't be digested. It doesn't give them any nutritional value, which is a very sad thing. When we think of it, all this is man-made. Plastic debris facilitates the transport of invasive species through dispersal and rafting. And because plastic pollution, it's so persistent, it could travel vast distances. It makes it a global challenge. So you can't just say it's a local problem. It is a global international challenge for us to try and clean up. And more than 8 million metric tons of plastic enter oceans every year. So EBB, well, every bottle back. We try to make an impact in the 3 years we've been in operation. So to date, we have collected over 300 metric tons of plastic bottles. This leads to a visible reduction in plastic waste in participating areas. Our first branch that we launched in Charlotte Street, Port of Spain in 2022. I mean, years prior, you could see on news where they said there was significant flooding in the Port of Spain area. And when you'd see videos where the waterways were clogged with a bunch of bottles and other debris. After we opened our office and up to last year during the rainy season, we could visibly see a reduction in what's going on in Port of Spain. When the rains come and the first water comes down through the drains and the canals, you're seeing less plastic material, less bottles, less debris in the waterways. So it's leading to less visible flooding. It's my hope we were the ones who are impacting it and making this change. Because we're located in the downtown Port of Spain area, there's a lot of homeless population, and they play a key role in our impact on the environment because they would actually go around. They'll be collecting the bottles. They even collect, a lot of homeless people do collect the glass material. Now they're collecting the plastic bottles and bringing it to us. So it's an active program we're seeing it benefit everyone that we hope we are touching, and everyone is benefiting from the program. So we engage in engaging individuals. We partner with businesses, schools. There are places of worship. We even have an entrepreneur and community program going on where we try to drive meaningful change in all these areas. It's to implement a convenient and efficient plastic bottle collection system. So the entrepreneurs, even though we only have 2 main locations, the entrepreneur system works where even in your local area, so let's say Aranjuez or San Juan, they would be servicing that area and collecting the plastics as they go. It matters a lot to us because we want to promote shared responsibility for a more sustainable future. Like I said, we all share the exact same island. I know I would want to live in a island that's clean and pretty and not like a dump. So we want to raise awareness through educational initiatives and outreach programs, both physically and digitally, such as what we're doing in this workshop here. We've also done a lot of programs in communities where they would have pop-up events and they try to educate their community members, even the other organizations too who arrange HSE days. We would try to go to these trade shows and educate the population. We encourage behavioral change through long-term environmental stewardship. So it's been 3 years since we started, and we've consistently seen the people who participate with us. They've been consistently coming in, dropping in bottles, and cleaning up their environment. So Switzerland, I want to focus on this country because they actually have a high recycling rate of 53%. And because this is so high, we try to follow their model. And what they do, they very strict on what they implement on the recycling program. So they make sure and separate at the source. So each individual household would purchase color-coded bags and bags that are designated for recycled materials and other like organic debris and stuff like that. And they would separate in their homes. And then there will be certain collection days where the collection truck would actually come and check to make sure the bags that they're picking up are filled of the items that it's supposed to be. Now, there are people who don't want to participate in this collection system. They have the option of dropping it off to various locations throughout the country. And these material recovery facilities are used for sorting, cleaning, and processing all these material. Even things like electronics and hazardous waste, they have specialized treatment plants for these things. Switzerland also does intensive education and community engagement programs. And they also incentivize their program where polluters are fined for what they produce. This is commonly referred to as the polluters pay principle. Switzerland has a closed loop system, which we're hoping we can one day adopt in Trinidad. And they have the deposit refund system, which is what we're currently implementing. So both locally and internationally, there are challenges when it comes to collection of plastic material. Mostly it comes from waste management infrastructure, where because there's inefficient collection and sorting systems, it leads to a lot of contamination in recycled materials. And when these materials are too contaminated, it's very hard for us to clean and reuse. It would be discarded because it's too much effort and too much money and economics put into make this material reused. Another thing that's a big challenge, it's the consumer behavior. So the public is, I won't say they're lacking awareness, but they're just, some of them are also hard to adopt a new habit. So because of all this resistance, people feel they don't have a big impact. They feel it's too much trouble to start separating at their source and try to take this initiative. Then there's the role of policy and government initiatives. The beverage container bill, it was started talks in the early 2000s. It's now 2025 and it's not yet passed. But we don't have to continuously wait on government to implement programs. We can do things individually ourselves. So one thing you can do, you can try to reduce your carbon footprint and promote sustainable practices. Even strengthen partnerships with eco-conscious organizations and communities. If you know there are your local community, local shop, they try to reduce their bags, you can go with your reusable bag. You want to create jobs in the recycling and waste management sectors. Don't just wait on the big companies to advertise positions available. You can be an entrepreneur yourself. Think outside the box and try to clean up the country. We want to support innovative and sustainable packaging and circular economy models. Also encourage corporate responsibility and policy advocacy. So if you know a brand you passionately would always go to and buy and you realize they don't have an environmental policy, change only happens when you take action. So you can try and lobby them, get them to change their SDG goals, or if they don't have corporate social responsibility, try and get them involved in these things. And we want to reduce marine pollution through improved recycling methods. So one company that really pushed the boundary that I found that was really nice was Adidas. In 2015, right, they decided to make a shoe from plastic waste found in the ocean and on coastlines. And they partnered with Poly for Oceans, which is an environmental group, where they were able to reduce waste in our oceans while also making a durable product. Adidas claimed they use more than 50% of recycled polyester for their products. It's a really good initiative by a company to make something that's, helping the oceans and making a product that, people would consume. So this is a earlier picture of our warehouse in Mount Lambert, where you can see it's this big pool of plastic bottles. At that time, we ran out of the silo bags, which are the big crocus bags you're seeing at the side. And because we ran out of that, we tried to make pools to contain the plastic. And when I saw this, it was really an impact of the impact we're having on the country. It really is significant because you're seeing this big mountain of plastic bottles. And earlier on in the presentation, when I asked people to weigh in on how much bottles they use, the majority of persons said they use 1 to 5 bottles, right? So let's take an average of 3 bottles per person for the week, right? And can somebody let me know what is our current participants in the meeting right now in this workshop?
We have, sorry, we have 16 people here right now.
Right. So let's say these 16 people, we use 3 bottles, 3 plastic bottles for the week, right? So that's about 48 plastic bottles for all of us here for this week. Now let's multiply that for the entire month. That's 192 bottles. Now let's go for the entire year. That's about 2,304 bottles we're all using at the end of the year. It's very hard for you to visualize what 2,000 bottles are if you're not constantly checking your bottle count. But when we convert it to, let's say, a monetary value, because people understand money a lot more. So if we take this value and multiply it by 5 cents, because we pay 5 cents a bottle, that would add up to $115.20. This is just money we're basically throwing away to our landfills. It may not seem like a lot of cash now, but when you think of it, your lifespan, we're all young people here, our lifespan is going to be very long. This is a significant amount of plastics we're putting into landfills. We can't do this recycling initiative and cleaning up the environment by ourselves. We partner with several agencies to try and clean up the country. So some to note were Flying Tree, who collects HDPE plastics to make benches, flower pots. We've recently partnered with them to make plastic pallets, which are what you do for shipping. If anyone's familiar with Flying Tree, they also help with the boardwalk, the Chagaramas boardwalk, to make the plastic lumber. Then IKEA, it's a prominent company. They've been around for a really long time. They collect plastic, glass, aluminum cans, drink cartons. There's Carib Glassworks Limited. They collect all glass material. And even New Age Recycling, who collects waste paper and cardboard material. So recycling is a lot like group work. We can only be effective if everyone actually participates. So, everyone should do their part. If you want to find out more about the programs that we have going on and what you can do to help your country and your community, I encourage you guys to visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or even on our website. And I hope this little lecture was informative to you, and I hope you realize little change does add up and you can start taking action today and be part of this change. And that's it for me. I hope everyone learns.
Thank you so much, Carissa. This was a wonderful presentation. I'm not sure how many of you all knew that we have a deposit refund system for plastics in the country, but every bottle back has been pretty popular. So if you have any questions at the moment, feel free to put them in the chat. I think I'm just curious about one thing is that, I know you all collect the plastics and stuff and you sort of process them. So what does that look like and where do they end up like after in that processing phase? And like I know there's a revenue attached to it. So, this is really like a part of our economy that can really contribute strongly to it. So yeah, just curious about that.
So right now, because we're still a young company and we require funding from sponsors, we're mainly a collection and sorting facility. What we do when we collect these plastics, we partnered with a lot of countries from South America. So we started with Colombia, went on to Honduras. It's basically those countries have the PET recycling manufacturers. We would export to them and they would ensure the plastics get recycled. And it's from that exportation that they're buying the plastics from us. We're able to pay our customers this small deposit. That's why the deposit is so small because it's still an economic cost for us. And until we can finally generate a revenue where we can establish our own local facility, which we're hoping can come about in the next 3 years. It's a long-term goal, but it's going to happen. We could actually start manufacturing and recycling stuff locally, so we don't have to depend on exportation and then importation of the material.
Okay, that sounds like amazing. I mean, yeah, I knew you all started like really recently, so I think it's expanded pretty quickly outside of Port of Spain as well. Um, sorry, excuse me. We have a question in the chat here. Lashonda says, my question is, if you take recycling in TNT seriously and do it in bulk, it kind of becomes trash and you need space for it. Any tips to help a household optimize recycling? Do we implement the color-coded bags here in TNT?
So when it comes to the color coded bags, I mean, I would love to say we should follow Switzerland models, but we're very far off from doing a mass collection through, our regular waste collection system through, you see the garbage truck passing, right? So even if we color code the bags, it's not going to make an impact when the garbage truck collects it. What you have to do, and I know it could be tedious sometimes, depends on where you live. You can see your local IKEA bins. They have some in a lot of areas. If you're close to one of our branches, we have one in Port of Spain and one in Mount Lambert, and you have the means to get to us. We're also accessible through public transport, so you don't need a car to come into us. You can literally walk to our facility through public transport when you drop off on the bus route. It's not that bad. And there are other means that you can try and get your plastics out of your house. Um, if you're living in a far off area, we try to implement the entrepreneur program where we're in talks with persons from certain areas. So if you're from like South Davie side, we have someone there who would do a collection. They would actually pass by your house or even have a designated drop off point. So we're slowly trying to expand to the rest of the country to make sure it's accessible for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I think, for my community, I would have like we were thinking that this could be something we can do with you all because, especially for many marginalized communities who don't have access to a lot of resources, support their community centers and things. This could be a source of revenue because we keep throwing away so much bottles all the time.
Yes. Yes, we actually had a branch before. Unfortunately, we had to close down at a community center in Londonville. But it just goes to show that people were interested in having it in their communities, and that was from the second year of our operation. So people are interested, and once people are, we try to reach out and make sure the program gets started in your community.
Sounds great. So I think I just have like one more question, which I know is like a little bit more international, but there's been this global plastics treaty that's been thrown around. So yeah, I would just like to know, like, I don't know too much about Trinidad's advocacy on this and sort of like how you think that we can get involved in that and sort of every bottle backs advocacy around this because it speaks to like extended producer responsibility and recycling, which is what you all are trying to close the loop. So yeah, just curious about that.
Locally, well, the container recycling bill has been in talks since the early 2000s, like I said. We've been pushing recently because there are a bunch of stakeholders involved. Our sponsors, Caribbean Bottlers, Blue Waters, there's the Cropper Foundation. There are other organizations who see the benefit of trying to recycle. We've all partnered with these people. There have been workshops and talks to try and get the change through government legislation. Of course, everything in the country, it goes up for debate. Something or the other gets rejected, it goes back down. A couple months pass, it gets up again for debate. It's a constant cycle. We're seeing hopefully the end of that cycle very soon, and they may actually pass the legislation to get these things done. We're fingers crossed. It's 25 years, so we're hoping it can get done. In terms of what can young people do, I mean, be the voice of change. We're the ones who would say we need this change because we want to improve the country. Be more vocal about what you want to see. Try and lobby your local government. Try and get programs started. Partner with groups such as a CYEN to get things going, and don't just wait on government policies is what I'm trying to say. Right? Do the action without having to wait for someone else to do it.
Okay, thank you so much, Carissa. That's really an inspiring message to leave with us young people here as we, try to mobilize around different issues. So thank you so much for this really informative presentation, and we will definitely be chatting a little more about marine pollution and plastics in our little Menti poll session later on. So thank you for joining us. And now I'm going to introduce our second panelist, who is Miss Jewel Batchesing from the BCRC Caribbean. BCRC is the Basel Convention Regional Center for Technology Transfer and Training for the Caribbean. Ms. Batchesing has joined BCRC Caribbean since March 2016 as the organization's policy, research, and planning specialist, and she is now the director. Ms. Batchesing is a career environmental management practitioner and has over 15 years of diverse experience in environmental assessment, policy, and planning in both the private and public sectors within the Caribbean region. Ms. Batchesing's past experiences range from global climate change negotiations to marine resource conservation. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Batchesing, who has like a lot of knowledge to mentor us young people. So we're really excited to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for the introduction, Michaela. Firstly, are you hearing me well? Because it's raining quite a lot, so I hope I'm not shouting.
No shouting, I think you're
Great,
perfect.
yeah. So let me try to share the screen.
We are seeing your screen. But you're muted, Ms. Batchesing.
Hi, thanks very much again for the invitation. Michaela doesn't know me too well, but I just want to say that it's always a pleasure for me to speak to the youth of any country because it's something that I strongly believe in. So I took the time today to make sure that I was present here to represent and give the support to you all because I think it's critical that those who are in the field of environment share their information with you all, because you are the future. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but it is so true. So my presentation has many slides, but I will go through them quickly so I won't bore you. I know I don't think I could join CYN because I am much older than you all, but I still want to provide that support to you all. So let's get going. And I'm happily take any questions at the at the end. I could be an honorary member, Michaela. So just to give you some context, we're just going to talk briefly about marine pollution. I looked at some of your information that you put in, so I'm not speaking to those who are completely ignorant. You all have some knowledge about this. Just want to share some quick statistics to really resonate how much of a problem this is and why it's now gaining international importance. And then, of course, I have to segue into the VCRC Caribbean because it would be remiss of me not to. And to tell you a bit about the Basel Convention and the link there between the Basel Convention and marine pollution. So very quickly, I will just say to you that marine pollution is something that could be considered visible and invisible. And the biggest statistic to share is that the oceans are the largest part of our Earth, right? And sometimes we forget that. There's a terminology that we use, small island developing states, but in other contexts, sometimes we call them large ocean states because we don't realize how much the ocean surrounds the globe. And for this reason, it has become an issue because you have marine pollution happening. And what is this marine pollution? And marine pollution could manifest itself in several ways. It's any discharge, and that discharge could be solid, it could be liquid, into the water bodies that form our oceans or the marine environment. And ultimately, it will have the impact of human health and potential deleterious effects to the environment. Now, what many people don't realize is that because the oceans are so large, and those of you who scuba dive or enjoy outdoor ocean activities would realize this. When you scuba dive or you snorkel, you see how many animals you see. And there are much more of them under the oceans and sometimes us on Earth. So it's another world, as we say. And as I said, you all are all students or young people who have an interest. And this is where the ridge to reef concept comes in, because you have to understand that what you do on land impacts what happens in the ocean. So you tossing a bottle cap on the streets of Frederick Street, that ends up in the ocean if it's not collected. You throwing a straw out of your car window on the Uriah Butler Highway eventually gets somewhere into the Caroni River and into the ocean. So that's the reality that we face. And that is a global issue because it's quite a few billion people and everyone is trying to do their part, but then you have those who aren't. So this was just a statistic slide for you to see the level of pollution. And you could see, some very nifty graphics here about trying to make you conceptualize the amounts of pollution that we have in the ocean. And the one on the blue whales for me was quite interesting, that we have enough plastic bottle caps to cover 781 blue whales, which is, of course, the largest mammal on Earth. And then just to bring it down to the region now, you'd notice, and there was mention from Michaela about the International Coastal Cleanup, which happens annually globally on the second Saturday of September, or the third Saturday, forgive me. It's always close to Ozone Day. And the Caribbean is always participating. Trinidad and Tobago participates in this, as well as other Caribbean countries. And you could see that the statistics corroborate with what even the previous presenter, Carissa, indicated, that beverage bottles are always a high percent. Interestingly, too, cigarette butts are always quite high as well. So this is the impact for you. It's on your doorstep. It's in your face. And then what has happened now is that we have microplastics. So the plastics that get into the ocean is not just about bottles floating. It's now about when UV light hits these bottles, they start to break down and they become into small chips. And these chips are quite large. There's no evidence of microplastics in fish that we eat or any sort of seafood that we eat because they are in that environment, filter feeding or just feeding. And they now are getting this. There was even an article at least 2.5 years ago where there was mention of microplastics crossing the blood-brain barrier in humans. So this is literally now in your face and impacting you directly, right? So the impact of marine pollution, you have coral reefs, and this is real for us. Although Trinidad and Tobago may not be heavily reliant as some of the other countries in the region and globally, but it does impact coral reefs. And how does it impact it? Again, going back to the ridge to reef concept, whatever happens on land impacts the marine environment. So you have nutrient-rich runoff. So you have a farmer in the hills of, let's go to Acerite Nature Center growing Christophine, for instance. And he's using heavy amounts of fertilizer. That nutrient-rich stuff gets into the Guanapo River, gets eventually into the Caroni River, and gets into the Caroni Basin. And these things cause eutrophication, which is the technical term, or algal blooms, which can impact coral reefs. Also, you have instances of just overall direct discharge into the environment from ships, for instance, who may discharge their ballast water, which could impact the marine environment. Persons who do terrible things, like just dumping waste into the environment. All of these things would, in fact, impact the coral reef system. Seagrass beds are always alongside our coral reefs, and the same approach applies, as well as the mangrove system. So we've had instances of oil spills happening. There was one recently in Tobago, and you know that these impacts can impact not only the actual marine environment, the animals that live there, and we all see terrible images of sea creatures being covered in oil and being trapped in the oil. And that oil spill happened very recently. And this was just an image to remind you of the impact of that, and that it's not always about, sometimes it can be an accident, but we also have to have mitigation measures to deal with these types of impacts. And the impacts of oil spills can be long lasting, but cleanup measures have improved over the years. So the health impacts, there's loss of livelihood and coastal impacts to the coastal environment and coastal protection. So the image here of a child swimming in a dirty marine environment, fishing lines is a huge issue as well, and the impact on the fishing industry is huge. And of course, if you have deterioration of the marine environment, your coastal protection, especially for small island developing states, is also impacted through dieback of mangroves, etc. Right? Locally, there are persons, and I won't spend much time on this slide because Carissa dealt with it. So you do have some initiatives locally that are happening with regards to plastic pollution and trying to now get innovative ideas to ensure that recycling happens and repurposing also happens. I also will warn that, persons like Flying Tree, I always urge them to make sure they do their leachate testing, because then you will have another problem if you don't do leachate testing to make sure that the mixture is correct when you are creating things like benches and pavers, etc. And many of you, I hope, participate in the IK and, of course, the Every Bottle Back initiative, which was mentioned earlier. So let me get straight into the Basel Convention Regional Center. Many of you may not know about us, despite our best efforts to reach the public. Maybe it's our approach, and we welcome any ideas as well to really reach out there. It does fall to my team, and kudos to them. They do an amazing job, but I am working on getting a communications consultant so that you could raise awareness more about the BCRC Caribbean. So let's talk a little more technical now. You all will understand that the Basel Convention is what we call a multilateral environmental agreement, an MEA. An MEA is, many of you may know things like UNFCCC, because climate change is very important, or the Convention on Biological Diversity. It's the same principle, and the Basel Convention was established, and it is a convention that deals with the movement of hazardous waste from country to country. So under that convention text, it specifically states that in order to ensure that countries meet the obligations under the convention, that regional centers should be established in certain specific areas to serve the countries, to support them in ensuring that they meet their obligations. Ergo, the BCRC Caribbean was born. Trinidad and Tobago, way back in 1998, decided, yay, we're going to host this center. And it was just a single desk. And now we're 18 strong. We have 18 project staff at the center, and we serve 15 countries in the region. As far north as Bahamas and as far south as Suriname, and as far west as Belize, and including the Dominican Republic and Cuba as well. The BCRC is just a name. We also ensure that the countries meet their obligations under the Rotterdam Convention, which deals with industrial chemicals and pesticides, the Stockholm Convention, which deals with a specific group of chemicals called persistent organic pollutants. That could be another presentation, Michaela, because they are all around us. And if you pay attention to it, you won't do anything or you won't move an inch. And of course, the Minamata Convention, which is the latest kid on the block that was established to deal with mercury. So our portfolio is quite large. We have over 22 million US dollars in projects, and the portfolio keeps growing. So it's the way that we can do our work, because we can't only rely on what the subvention is from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So we're very project oriented. The way that we do our work, we have to ensure that they meet the obligations under the conventions. We have to ensure that there's information sharing. We have to provide technical support and knowledge transfer. So what is this Basel Convention? So Basel Convention was developed to control pollution from ships at sea and to regulate the movement of hazardous chemicals across the oceans as well. So the convention was designed to ensure that if country A is moving material for disposal to country B, it is done in a particular manner. It cannot be done in an ad hoc fashion. And it is essentially based on, many of you may know this terminology, the waste hierarchy, and you really want to prevent what is happening before you get to the disposal. So Trinidad and Tobago, in particular, and the Caribbean regions are now making the efforts, as was evidenced with a scheme such as every bottle back, trying to minimize what waste is generated and do it through source separation, consolidate that waste and export it, rather than all of it going to the landfill. So you always want to manage these wastes as close to the source as possible, but it's not always possible. And I'll give an example. So the Basel Convention will tell you, in order to move materials, and there's a particular annex, annexes, that will stipulate which type of materials you must use the Basel Convention for. And for instance, e-waste is one of those materials. So if you're having electronic waste and Trinidad and Tobago generates electronic waste, a partner in Trinidad will take that electronic waste, and believe it or not, it goes to Singapore. In order to do that movement to Singapore, we have to ensure that Singapore has the requisite ability to do the disposal in an environmentally sound manner. And that is very, very complex. It has to be done through the Environmental Management Authority as the regulatory agency, and make sure that there's communication between the two parties in Trinidad and Tobago and Singapore in order for that movement to happen. If not, it will be deemed an illegal shipment under the Basel Convention. So these are some of the challenges that are faced by countries, and these are some of the benefits of implementing the convention. So as you know, we are very import dependent, and we have limited data for waste management. We have limited ability to deal with certain waste. Next week, for instance, the BCRC Caribbean is hosting an end-of-life vehicles assessment that we've done for the region. And persons don't realize what an issue end-of-life vehicles are. If you think about it, the statistics for Trinidad and Tobago are something like probably 900,000 cars on the road. Have you ever thought what happened to PBE cars? Where are they? Or PCA cars? Where are they? And it's a stark reality that we're facing with the actual impacts of a car and the separate components of a car, for instance. And all of these can be deemed as hazardous waste and need to be moved out through the Basel Convention through a procedure called the prior informed consent procedure. So it really tries to limit the dumping of waste from countries, and the Basel Convention also prevents developed countries from dumping their waste in developing countries like ourselves as well. Under the Basel Convention, there's several amendments that have happened, but one of the main amendments, and I think Carissa would know this, that in order to move plastics, you now have to sort the plastics by color. And so previously when plastics were exported, it was all mixed. You'd have black bottles with white bottles with transparent bottles, etc. Now you have to do by color, and it has to be shipped under the Basel Convention requirements. Now, you would have noticed simple things happening. Those of you who remember or drink Sprite or 7-Up, you'd have remember their bottles were green. Now their bottles are clear. And this was one of the reasons, so it would help with the sorting of bottles globally as well. And there was mention of this, plastics and overall plastics and the marine environment. Plastic pollution is now a huge issue. And the latest convention that is now going to be developed, and it will be developed in your lifetime, is that for plastics treaty. It has to be negotiated through something called an Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, or INC. And what they do is that they try to meet, they initially set a target of doing just 5 INCs. Unfortunately, when they met in Busan, Korea last year, there was no agreement, and they are now moving to 5.2, which will be held in Uruguay in June, with a view that this treaty will be finalized. It is a very short time. I know you may not know this, but usually conventions take much longer to negotiate, and this is quite complex, so there are different points of view. And this particular convention involves the private sector as well, because they are a key player. So this is quite a complex issue, and they're really hoping for success in Uruguay, but don't be surprised if it's pushed to 5.3 or 6, depending on what they call it. But this treaty will then do exactly what other multilateral environmental agreements seek to do, and ensure that there is protection of the environment going forward. Just quickly, because I know I'm short on time, is that we at the center have done some regional initiatives to start the work towards plastic management. And we've done plastic inventories for the governments of Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, and Suriname. Locally, we just finished up, well, these are some of the national initiatives that are happening through the Ministry of Public Utilities. You would have heard some of this, the solid waste policy framework, as well as the solid waste policy. And then finally, after 25 years, hopefully a national deposit return policy, which should happen soon. On the BCRC side, nationally, we just completed this project for Trinidad and Tobago with funding from USAID, and we now have all of these roadmaps and strategy for plastic pollution in Trinidad and Tobago, and you'll see a rollout of a communication and awareness strategy for this project happening very soon, because this project closes at the end of May 2025, 31st, 2025. Right, and in addition, as I'm addressing the youth, and which has a definition, by the way. So those of you who are near to 25, please know that your time may soon expire. But nonetheless, some people use 25 years, some people use 32. But this is an initiative called the Plastic Tide Tuners Challenge that we rolled out, and we were able to engage quite a lot of participation. And in Trinidad, we had at least 11,000 youth engaged through a partner called Restore a Sense of ICANN. And they did some awesome work. And I will try to play this video if I can, but if not, I don't know if you'd hear it, but you might see people you know.
Our beaches are full of it. In fact, 11 million tons of it ends up in our seas each year. By 2050, there'll be more plastic in the sea than fish. But kids and young adults in our Pacific and in the Caribbean are taking action. I'm a plastic tide turner. It's super easy to become a tide turner yourself by joining the Plastic Tide Tuners Challenge. Start by fighting plastic waste today. The challenge accomplishes three things. It engages us to address a global issue that's threatening our marine life. It leads to actions to reduce plastic pollution, and it motivates people to change their behavior. We need you, the youth of the Caribbean and the Pacific region, between the ages of 11 and 25 like me. To join the challenge today, we have to reduce the amount of plastic we use because our marine life is depending on us. And so is everyone else on the planet. So visit greenforum.org and gfislands.org to learn more. And look out for the Titanus app launching soon. Let's turn the tide on plastic pollution together.
Okay, so I hope you heard it right. I can't see my screen right now. So you can't join the Plastic Titaners challenge. Unfortunately, like any good app, we have some technical difficulties that we're trying to rectify now. But the app allows you to do several challenges and then eventually become a champion. And it is a global platform to also engage as well. And we did some really cool initiatives. We engaged with several countries. They did actual collections. St. Lucia, they built a wheel out of wire and they filled it with plastics. They did some pretty cool stuff under this Plastic Titanus challenge. So I encourage you to find out more. And locally, through Restore Sense of ICANN, they did some awesome work as well. They developed their own videos and flipbook, etc. Right, and oops, sorry, no, don't play. For some reason, I don't know what is happening with my computer, but let's go. So do you have any questions? I'll happily take them. And this is our handles. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, we're on X, and we also are on LinkedIn. You can follow us, whichever platform you prefer. Always willing to take any questions. And again, as I said, any question is welcome. And really continue through. The fact that you're here on a Saturday attending this meeting really shows that you are interested. So don't lose that passion. And you could always reach out to me privately if you need any help at any time. I'm always willing to help and support the youth and, well, generally anyone. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So back to you, Michaela.
Thank you very much, Ms. Batchesing, for this really amazing presentation. And we have some questions starting to roll in, but I just want to say that, it's really a wonderful thing to think about beyond the plastic waste and the other types of waste that we produce, even in our own households. So it's wonderful to know that we have organizations like the BCRC Caribbean addressing these issues. And of course, from our side, we are happy always to help push these sort of agendas for young people to get involved in these sort of things. So we're always here to support on that regard. We have a question from Lashonda who says, my question is, what happens if your shipment is deemed illegal? Is there a fine?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Lashonda. So you can be fined based on national law, but what happens is that if for instance a shipment is moving from Trinidad and Tobago to Korea, which really happens, we ship lead acid batteries from the Caribbean to South Korea, and the shipment is deemed illegal, there's a clause in the Basel Convention that says return to sender. So if you ship it illegal and it gets to Korea, and the Korean authorities recognize that it's not a legal shipment, it goes back to sender, and you, of course, if you have done the shipment, you have to pay all the fees, all the brokerage fees to take it back, and it becomes your problem. Sometimes you can get fined, of course.
Okay, thank you for that. It's really interesting to know that, and I think, a lot of us don't know the content of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions, some of the most important waste materials that we produce.
Yeah, for sure. If I start to talk to you all won't. Yeah, it's everything. On the chair I'm sitting on the computer, listening to me on everything, your phone, everything.
Yeah, most certainly. And it exists in our everyday life, and LaShonda says too, like a lot of companies also consider that. And I think there's a lot in the Basel Convention around that. So yeah, I'm curious also, is there any effort from BCRC Caribbean in terms of like supporting in the enforcement of the Basel Convention and the related conventions? I know this might be a lot to get into.
That's fine. I'll try
Yeah.
to simplify it as best as I can to answer the question. So the Basel Convention has the caveats of meeting these obligations of like national reporting, because you have to determine each country as a party to this convention has to tell the Secretariat in Geneva how many shipments you've made, were there any illegal shipments, etc. So what we've done in order to ensure that countries have met their obligations is that we've developed a video as a sustainable tool to assist them with their national reporting. And for instance, the government of Grenada recently joined the Basel Convention. They're the latest signatory for the Caribbean region for Basel. They asked us to do a presentation, and we'll facilitate that with certain stakeholders to raise awareness on the Basel Convention, because they were very new to it. And illegal shipments were happening actually between Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago. So in order to rectify that, they asked us. So that's the type of approach we'll take. The next one, of course, is that I would love to do another video to really explain the PIC procedure so that it can be used globally for understanding the Basel Convention.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Batchesing. So I take it that there are no other questions. So I just really want to thank you for
Is
your
that boring? Gosh.
I know I would have thought a lot of people here are all about international. I
Yeah.
think they're still ruminating about all the amazing information. But definitely not a boring presentation. LaShonda asked, do you have any idea in terms of a figure of how your impact reduces our carbon footprint?
I can't say, no, I can't say. I mean, I really try to make the organization itself sustainable in little things, but it's not perfect. And I can't say. Maybe ask me in a few years.
Yes, I know there's so many things that contribute to our carbon footprint, so could never get into a never-ending stream of researching things. That's the case. But thank you so much for joining, Ms. Patterson. We really enjoyed this
Call me
presentation.
Jewel, I mean, you can call me with like, you call me Jewel, it's fine.
I know as a youth, I have a different level of respect for people like you. So thank you so much for joining.
I feel like you
And
wanted to say old people like me, but I'll take it.
for
Not
sure
yet.
that